Welcome to Football Game Plan, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bringing you a preview of the 2020 edition of the Spring League. And you ask, what is the Spring League? Well, let's find out. The Spring League is the premier professional football development league in the United States and abroad. All teams in the Spring League utilize one central location for both practices and games. Now, the league's unique format affords scouts and front office personnel with an opportunity to evaluate players in a quote-unquote real football context. Now, the majority of the players who participate in the Spring League have spent time on an NFL active, practice, or preseason roster. The Spring League consists of 6 teams, and the 2020 fall season will take place this year in San Antonio, Texas. Now, they also host showcases in the summer and fall to provide additional opportunities for players to be evaluated. Now, since 2017, over 140 players have signed to the NFL and CFL since they started playing the Spring League in 2017. Like I mentioned, and the median age of the Spring League player is 24, so it's right around that sweet spot for guys that need development to really further their professional career. And 20 NFL teams have attended the Spring League since 2017. Now that we know what the Spring League is and what it is all about, let's take a look at the teams, players, and coaches that will participate in this year's edition. Like we mentioned earlier, the spring team will consist of 6 teams, and those 6 teams are the Generals, the Jousters, the Blues, the Alphas, the Aviators, and the Conquerors. And here are the coaches. You have Bart Andrus of the Generals, Chuck Bresnahan with the Jousters, the defensive mastermind Ted Cottrell is with the Blues, Steve Fairchild is with the Alphas, Terry Shea, the quarterback guru, is with the Aviators, the creator of the Grits Blitz, Jerry Glanville, the longtime NFL and CFL coach, he's with the Conquerors. Let's start with the Alphas, who are being coached by Steve Fairchild, and they have 2 intriguing quarterbacks in J.T. Barrett, the Ohio State great, and Chase Forcade, who is a legend in his own right for the Nichols Colonels. Now, Barrett bounced around the NFL on various practice squads and will get an opportunity to put some tape together to see how much he has progressed from his collegiate days. Now, when he was down at the 2018 East-West Shrine game, I thought he was the best quarterback down there in attendance, as he had a strong week of work all week long. Forcade was a highly decorated quarterback at Nichols, leading the team to the playoffs 3 out of the 4 years that he was there, finishing as the school's all-time leading passer, total passing yards, passing and rushing touchdowns, and was 2-time Southland Conference Player of the Year. He was in the 2020 NFL draft class, so the Spring League will be a good outlet for him to showcase his skills. Take a look at the running back position. 2 backs they have signed. Reggie Gillespie was solid at the Tropical Bowl last January. Another one of these 2020 NFL draft prospects. And at receiver, you see a guy like Cameron Williams out of Incarnate Word. He's a player that I thought was a solid inside receiver prospect. Saw him down at the College Gridiron Showcase. He put together a strong week of work. And again, here's an opportunity for a guy to showcase his skill set in front of NFL and CFL scouts. At tight end, I'm intrigued to see how former Florida Gator DeAndre Goolsby does, as he has an intriguing set of skills. Along the offensive line, Kent Perkins was a really good player at Texas and figures to play a key role up front. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, along the defensive line, 2 Tropical Bowl players, or former Tropical Bowl players, should have success, and that's Dwayne Hendricks from Pitt and Kevin Thurman from Arkansas State. Thurman can play anywhere up front and was underrated as a prospect coming out of Arkansas State this past season. He played through an injured hand and was still a disruptive force up front. This will be a good opportunity for him. The linebackers have some juice to them, with Texas State's Brian London II and former Chattanooga Mock Bantrell McMillan, who was up in the CFL, having success as a lengthy pass rushing presence coming off the edge. He figures to serve in that same capacity with the Alphas. Ro Farris out of Hawaii is a tremendous player with a ton of speed and explosiveness. He'll give them some length at cornerback. And they added a few more players to the roster after their initial signings. Center John Yarbrough from Richmond was an excellent player in college and had a standout week down at the Tropical Bowl and FCS Bowl back in 2019. Let's move on to the Aviators that are being coached by Terry Shea. We talked about him being a quarterback guru. Well, he gets a pro player to already work with in McLeod Bethel-Thompson, who comes into the Spring League from the Toronto Argonauts, where he played some solid football for the Argos the last couple of seasons. He helped save their season, so to speak, when he was inserted into the lineup. So you look at this running back position, and I think when you look at Devwah Whaley out of Arkansas, you instantly want to say, man, if he can stay healthy, they have themselves a steal. I thought injuries was the main culprit when he was at Arkansas, because when he was healthy, he showed everything that you wanted to see from a tailback. He had the power, the burst, the explosiveness, the ability to catch the football out of the backfield. Health is going to be the biggest key for him, and if he can display all of that in this season with the Spring League, he's going to find himself on an NFL roster pretty soon. Blocking for him up front, there's some really good linemen. Abdul Beecham out of Kansas State was another guy that I saw down at the Tropical Bowl 2 seasons ago, and he was one of the better linemen there, especially when it came to regards to pass protection. So if you have a guy on the interior that can pass protect like that, you're going to be just fine as far as the passing game is concerned. I feel like the Aviators have some solid linebackers. Ty Schwab from Boston College, Jeremiah Spicer has been around the block, very productive player. In the secondary, Joseph Puto is a really good prospect, and Devion Smith from Michigan, the running back, spent some time with the Miami Dolphins. He was also another one of these Shrine Game standouts, so I'm excited to see how he and Whaley do in that Aviator backfield. Next up, we take a look at the Blues being coached by Ted Cottrell, and he has a tremendous quarterback prospect in Jackson Erdman from St. John's, a Division III powerhouse. And man, can this guy really sling the football all over the yard. I think he excels better in the intermediate areas of the field, but does have very good touch on his deep passes. When you look at the backfield, they're going to be able to run the heck out of the football. You look at Deshaun Waller, one of my favorite prospects this past draft class, has a little bit of wiggle, but also has that explosiveness that you want to see from the position he starred at Alcorn State. And Ty Flanagan was a standout at the College Gridiron Showcase as well. He brings a lot more power to the position, able to run through arm tackles and defenders in the same process. Not only will they be strong in the backfield, but they should be solid on the perimeter. Quadarius Smith had a really strong all-star game circuit. I like what he brings to the table, but that offensive line, my goodness, should be able to consistently move guys off the spot. Dwayne Wallace was excellent in the XFL, also had a standout all-star game circuit during his draft cycle. You look at Tyler Romer, really good tackle prospect, had some time with the Raiders, also was a teammate of Wallace in the XFL with the Los Angeles Wildcats. And I've always been a big fan of Teron Prescott of NC State and what he can do on the inside in the run blocking department. So they're going to be solid up front. They also should be able to get pressure on the quarterback. You look at Prince Martin Aguike from Temple. He's an undersized player, but definitely one that has to burst off the football and always finds himself making a game-changing play in the backfield. At linebacker, Darrell Nash is a name to keep an eye on. He's a tackle machine coming out of St. Augustine's, that Division II HBCU program in North Carolina. He was always involved in the play at the second level. And Glenn Harris out of Wayne State in Nebraska is the epitome of a guy that has ball skills. Every time you look up, he's making plays on the football, whether that's at the safety position, as a combo guy, or as a corner. I think he can play inside, outside, or also back deep. In a couple of additions, you look at Joe Walker. I have him listed as an athlete. I've seen him play quarterback, wide receiver, defensive back at his pro day. I think wherever you line him up on the football field, he can excel. And Owen Obayusi out of Hampton spent some time with the Arizona Cardinals. He's a big mammoth guy up front, can play any one of the techniques that you want. I'm pretty sure Ted Cottrell will have a plan for him to be successful. Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Jerry Glanville heads the Conquerors and has a really strong quarterback room, athletic quarterback room led by Kevin Anderson from Fordham. Always appreciated his game and what he was able to do inside the pocket as well as outside the pocket. And you look at Justin McMillan out of Tulane. He was down at the Tropical Bowl. The left-handed quarterback is a streaky passer, but one that can string together a lot of good throws in a row. So the quarterback room shouldn't be a problem for the Conquerors, especially if they're going to try to run some sort of run-and-shoot type offense. At wide receiver, two guys really stand out to me, and that's Patrick Smith of Tennessee State and Michael Bandy of San Diego. Now, Smith is a guy that has tremendous body control, can play across the position as far as inside or outside, and Bandy, I thought, was an underrated prospect coming out of San Diego, a prolific receiver for the Toreros, and one that's going to cause a lot of problems for the secondary because he's so explosively quick in and out of his breaks. At tight end, you want to talk about upside, you look no further than Monmouth tight end Sean Clark. He's 6'7", close to 6'8", but one that has all the upside in the world because he wasn't really utilized as a receiver until his senior season at Monmouth, and we saw him down at the College Gridiron Showcase, where he put together a very strong week of work, and one that gives you the confidence that he's going to fulfill that upside potential. And that's why the Spring League is such an important asset for him to take advantage of. And I think the Conquerors may have the strongest linebacking core in the Spring League. You look at Deshaun Davis out of Auburn, was a big fan of his game coming out of college. Zach Call was Mr. Everything for Southeast Missouri State and had a strong week at the Tropical Bowl this past January. But Roy C. out of Sam Houston State, I thought was a very underrated and unique prospect because he played safety at the College Gridiron Showcase, but also was a linebacker at Sam Houston State. So he fits the mold of what you look for at that new age position where he can cross over and play at the second level or even at the third level. And I thought every day at the College Gridiron Showcase, he got better and better in coverage. And speaking of coverage, you look at Tyson Graham, the safety from South Dakota, but he has played across the board. He's played in the NFL, AAF, XFL more recently, and he's the type of player that you can see serving in a similar role like Roy C. He can play back deep as a traditional strong safety. I thought he got better in coverage the more pro games he played, but also as a blitzer and an edge setter versus the run. So they got a really good versatile prospect in Graham. Bart Andrus is the head coach of the Generals, and when you see how he compiled his roster, you can start to understand his vision. He's going with a veteran quarterback to the Spring League in Zach Mettenberger, but this offense will be about speed and predicated on the big play. And Darnell Holland out of Kennesaw State gives them exactly that coming out of the backfield. He's coming out of a triple option offense, and once he hits that corner, you can pretty much get the extra point team ready because he is off to the races. Had a really strong camp with the New Orleans Saints. At wide receiver, you look at Calvin McKnight, who was a favorite target of Devlin Hodges out there at Sanford. This guy was a prolific wide receiver and had a lot of wild moments in camp with the Denver Broncos. Bucky Hodges at tight end, a former wide receiver in college, now still transitioning to the tight end position, should help further that point about being explosive. Along the offensive line, I've always been a big fan of Dejon Allen out of Hawaii. He's a guy that can play across the formation, across the offensive line. We saw him at left tackle. He played interior offensive line with the Bears and Packers, also starred in the XFL as well. So it's clear to see the Generals want to be explosive. They want to be dynamic, and that carries over to the defensive side of the football as well. When you look at the secondary, two guys that really stand out to me, and that's Rashad Robinson, who's in the 2020 draft class, and a guy that I thought should have gotten drafted in the NFL this past year. He has great ball skills, but he had that injury last year, which caused him to go back to James Madison and just really didn't find his footing like we saw him do his junior season. And Channing Stribling gives him a lot of length at the cornerback position. He was a star at Michigan, had a really good week of work at the East-West Shrine game. We saw him get a chance with the Browns in training camp, but he recently was with the Seattle Dragons in the XFL and was one of their top corners. When you look at some of the additions, I like the fact that they went back to James Madison and got Andrew Ankra, who was a pass rushing extraordinaire with the Dukes and was one definitely with the St. Louis Battlehawks in the XFL. So it's all about affecting the game on both sides of the ball with dynamic players and explosive talents. And finally, let's wrap up with the Jousters that are being coached by Chuck Bresnahan, who has two outstanding quarterbacks. Quint Flowers was a star in the XFL, and I'm glad he's getting another opportunity to showcase his skill set that he put on display for the Vipers in the XFL. Carter Stanley, I thought, had an outstanding senior season for Kansas, one that was very underrated. And I like how he is able to work in the intermediate levels of the field. Also has some very good athleticism to bring to the table. The running back position, I think, is going to be solid. I like Cedric O'Neal out of Valdosta State. He had a cup of coffee with the Philadelphia Eagles, was doing some great things in their training camp. So I like what they've built so far with the quarterbacks, the running backs, tight end. When you look at Cheyenne O'Grady, who was showing the flashes at Arkansas, just wasn't able to put it all together on a consistent basis. But if the light finally comes on, he could be a big-time player at that position. Bunchy Stallings from Kentucky, I thought, was underrated at the Wildcats in the Wildcats program, and one that's going to benefit from taking advantage of the Spring League, where he can put on some good tape and showcase to the NFL what he definitely brings to the table. Kadir Shepard at defensive end, to me, was one that I thought would still be on an NFL roster. He has upside. I spoke with him at the NFL Combine. He spoke about how he's still growing into the position as a pass rusher. I think he does a very good job dropping back in coverage, so he gives you a little bit of that flexibility that you want on the defensive side of the football. And Joshua Simmons was the guy I spoke with at the Tropical Bowl. He was so good down there, he earned an invite to the NFLPA game, went out there, starred in that All-Star event as well, and also earned himself an opportunity with the Oakland Raiders and also with the Chicago Bears. So injuries kind of kept him out of the NFL, but he has the explosiveness, the speed, the athleticism, and the versatility because he can play any position on the back end. And here is a list of the specialists that will be assigned to each one of the 6 teams here in the Spring League. So that's it here for Football Game Plan. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts, and don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating.